debt cycle and how that works. When debt rises faster than income, you get to spend more. So I'll explain it in brief. Let's imagine you're earning $100,000 a year and you have no debt. Then I can go out and borrow. Because I have no debt, I can go to the bank and I can borrow. And let's say they lend me $10,000 a year. So now I have $110,000 a year that I could spend. When I spend that $110,000, somebody else earns $110,000. So that causes their earnings to go up. As their earnings go up, they also can go to the bank. And so you build a cycle in which debt rises faster than income. Most importantly, that debt rises faster than the ability to service income. So that is a self-reinforcing upward cycle. It causes asset prices to rise because if incomes are rising, companies are doing better, so their earnings do better. And so people with debt can buy goods, services, or financial assets. And those things cause them to go up. So there's a debt expansion. But obviously, debt can't rise faster than income forever. Usually, when we had a downturn, you'd lower interest rates because lowering interest rates would have stimulative effects on the economy. First, when you lower interest rates, it has the effect of making it easier to service your debt. Lower interest rates make it easier to service the debt. Also, it makes items that are bought on credit cheaper. Your monthly payments go down. If you buy a car or a house, your monthly payments go down if interest rates are lower, so it makes it cheaper, meaning you could afford more. So it stimulates the economy. And it also has the effect of raising assets prices because assets, if you have an income stream, it could be renting a property, you're comparing it with the going interest rate. And if the interest rate goes down, the value of the asset goes up. So it has a wealth effect. So as the economy works when there were lower interest rates, it would have the effect of stimulating an economy. And that stimulated economy really stimulated debt growth and therefore purchasing on debt, and it raises. So the economy always has gone through these cycles in which interest rates go up when they're trying to slow the economy, interest rates go down when they're trying to stimulate the economy. However, when interest rates get close to zero, it doesn't work. So you have a lot of debt. Debt is rising faster than income. Can't go on forever. Can't lower interest rates. They hit zero. And the world changes. So that's the basic cause-effect dynamic. So in 2006, 2007, it was very clear we were in a bubble. But like all of these situations, people at the time very much get carried away with what's happening at the time. Like 2005, 6, everybody says the stock market goes up, it's a great investment because it went up. They don't realize it's more expensive. Going up may make it more expensive. But no, they look back and they say it's a great investment, or houses, or I can go borrow money and buy houses and do this. But they don't think about the paying back and how that works. This is human nature. This has happened through hundreds and thousands of years. And so they get to the point where interest rates can't go down, there's not a rectifying of the problem, and you begin a deleveraging. And then the process begins to work in reverse. A deleveraging means no longer can you raise income faster, no longer can you raise your debt faster than your income. So if you can't, you have to slow your debt, you have to slow your spending. So as you slow your spending, you're slowing somebody else's income. And when I say it's the purchase of goods, services, and financial assets. And as you slow the purchases of goods, services, and financial assets, the economy goes down and the assets go down. And as the assets go down and the incomes go down, there's more of a need to cut your spending. And so it begins to build a self-reinforcing negative cycle. There's not enough money in the system. There's not enough money in the system because, again, Just think of it. There's spending, and spending could be paid for either by money or credit. So if you go into a store and you're buying something, let's say I'm buying a suit, I can pay for it either by credit or I can pay by money. If I pay by credit, it's a promise to deliver money. If I pay by money, that transaction's complete. But since I can pay by credit, I can stimulate the demand, I can have a strong economy, but I owe money. And so the owing of the money means that when I can no longer produce credit and I have to go get money, I need more money in the system. And when you have a zero interest rate, then the central bank is stuck because this deleveraging will continue to feed on itself. It will continue, I don't spend, you don't earn, it goes down. Can't service my debts because I don't have enough money to service my debts. Banks get in trouble because the person who they lent them the money to doesn't pay back. What is a bank? A bank is a very simple thing. People gather, they put money in a bank. That person goes and lends it, that bank goes and lends it to some other people, and they then hope to get paid back at a higher interest rate. That's what it is. And so when those people can't pay back because that credit cycle starts to work in reverse and they can't pay back, then the banks get in trouble. They lose money. And when they lose money, then they're bad banks. And the whole system works. So you see that at the same time as there's a contraction in credit, there is a stock market falling because you need to sell assets. And because of the contraction in credit and people are spending less, earnings of companies go down, so the companies are worth less. And because of then the debt problems, the banks don't do well, so we have a banking crisis. So you see that deleveraging happens and in the ways that we're used to happening. The private sector debt doesn't increase, spending is less, banks get in trouble, markets go down, and so on, and there's not enough money. The central bank lowers interest rates hit zero, they're stuck. So that's a deleveraging, and that's a depression part of a deleveraging. Take the 30s, take Japan's deleveraging. These are iconic deleveraging and our deleveraging. At first, austerity is the path because you realize, debt is a problem, and what we all have to do is stop getting into more debt. That becomes obvious. We can't continue to do that. So we go through the austerity. But as we go through that austerity, there's a feedback loop because that lack of spending, that lacking of debt, causes somebody else's income to go down. Okay, so then there's a problem because of the debts. So we encounter a lot of debt defaults. And we think about restructuring debts. Those debt defaults means, okay, how do we re-enter an agreement in which we can get past that you can pay what you can afford? And so there's a debt restructuring, a lot of debt restructurings. But the debt restructurings also don't help because, they help to some extent, but they also bring with them problems because one man's debts are another man's assets. So if I lower your debt, let's say when you do a restructuring, you can pay half. Your mortgage, you come in, we'll readjust your mortgage, and you can pay half. Then I have to write down that mortgage. And so my wealth goes down. And as my wealth goes down, I can borrow less and I can spend less. So it feeds on itself. So the problem is that there's too much debt relative to income. So you can reduce the debt by having austerity and cutting your debt, and that's good. And that's deflationary, and it's negative for growth because austerity means less spending. And you can restructure, so that is deflationary, and it's negative for growth. And so that produces a lot of pain at the same time. So like in the 30s, 1929 stock market crash, and you go through that, and it keeps feeding on itself, And it's not enough. It's not good enough because it causes that self-reinforcing process. And then eventually, the central banks print money. So in March 1933, which was the bottom of the Great Depression, President Roosevelt severs the link with gold and prints money, because money, a debt is a promise to deliver money. So if I can slip a little money into the system, it eases that pressure. The printing of money, people think, is inflationary, and in and of itself, it is inflationary. But if it's happening at the same time as the other deflationary factors are happening, so that there is still austerity, there is a certain amount of restructuring or working out debts, and the amount of printing, so that they balance. All three of those approaches have the effect of lowering debt relative to income. So you can lower debt relative to income without having a terrible situation. It's still not. This takes a long time. They call it the lost decade. These countries go through lost decades. It's usually more than a decade, maybe 15 years. But it's an adjustment process, if done well, in which there's the right mix between austerity, not raising debt relative to income, and restructuring, getting the debt payments in order, and putting enough money into the system. So you're seeing Europe go through that. It's classic. And all countries and people and companies, in one way or another, through history, this has happened. I mean, the main lesson to learn, but it's not human nature to, is not to have debt rise faster than income for an extended period of time, because that's a bubble that won't last.